Welcome to Tribe. Today's it's going to be a very special time because a whole bunch of people are at Corpus Christi worshiping together at a conference. So we have a little bit more of an intimate circle here. We're going to let the kids Tribe kids go to to whatever it is that they're doing, and learning about Jesus, I think. And what we'll do is I've asked three couples to come down and share some stories with us and some wisdom with us. And as they come down, and if I can get a couple of people help me with the stools over here. What we'll do is we'll talk about, because a lot of the people in Corpus there's a singles conference. Not some of them are still here, and you get to take a sneak peek at what's going on here at the marriage story. But we're going to talk about marriage. Now, 22 years ago, yesterday, Deb and I got married. And so it was our anniversary yesterday. And, one thing that I love about this, you can come out, guys. When I became a Christian, I had failed at love, like totally miserably, right, completely. And I was determined when I became a Christian to follow two principles going forward and to get it right. And those two principles were that I will build my love life and my marriage by obeying the Bible and only the Bible, and not follow my own advice in my own cultural context, in my own origin story, in my own family, but just stick with the Bible and only the Bible. And the second was that I would learn humbly at the feet of those who obeyed the Bible and who have a good marriage to show for it. And that's just two things. And it's simple, but it's hard all at the same time, right? But I'll tell you this. When I decided to do that, that's what I did. And 22 years later, I have a fantastic marriage. And I have a glorious marriage. From a dysfunctional failure of a person, in relationships, I've somehow magically been transformed to a good husband and a good dad and everything. And all of that is through the grace of Jesus and through obeying those two things. So I asked these guys to share because I think I know them well, and they are as imperfect and as I am, but as determined to obey the Bible and to learn from those who obey the Bible. It's just very, very simple. So what I've asked them to do is to answer three questions. And I'm going to put these three questions on the board over here. And what we're going to do is just spend some time answering those questions as a community. Just imagine if you're around a fire, Fireside chat. That's what's going to happen. Okay, so let's answer those three questions. And I'll sort of MC if I need to, but I'm probably going to not need to.
Oh, we go first.
Whatever order.
Fireside. Okay, so how did you overcome a crisis in your marriage? Okay, so I think when I saw this as a question, and we were kind of talking about this week, the first thing that I thought of was that early on in our marriage, I think when we got married, our desire was to have the perfect marriage, to be faithful to each other, to work through every conflict, to never go to sleep angry, to one day have kids and be the perfect parents. And I think this idea of a crisis, if somebody had asked me this question early on in our marriage, I would have thought, no, we're never going to have a crisis, because if we do all these things, crises will never come. So one thing I would say, just starting off, is that I've learned in our short time in marriage is that crises are inevitable. They are unavoidable, because life happens, and you're going to have different challenges in your marriage. I'll let my wife kind of share about one that we faced early on, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we navigated that.
Yeah, so early on in our marriage, we had a rocky first 2 years. I don't know about everyone else here or in this room, but our first 2 years were rough. And a lot of it was that we had this idealistic picture of what our marriage would be, and it wasn't that. And being like, you hear all the storybook things about marriage, and then you come to the kingdom, you're like, it's gonna be even better because we did things the right way. Like, we waited till our wedding day for our first kiss, and we're like, this is gonna be amazing. But then, was it our first or second anniversary, we're thinking this is gonna be special, or I'm thinking this is gonna be special, and then we end up having a conversation where essentially the phrase, I don't know if I love you anymore, came out. And that's like a shatter, right? Like, you just, everything is like, what did we do wrong so soon and so young? And I think what helped us to overcome this, because there were so many things in that, and we're gonna have to pass the mic, but I won't dive in. But what I will say is that once we finally started to get open about those things and talk to people, that's when we finally started to be able to heal. And someone, because we were the couple that were like, we'll figure it out ourselves, and then we're gonna move on. Like, we talked about it one time, we're done, next. Like, what do we need to do now? And we didn't dive in to those little issues, and they built up. But finally, someone, after 2 years, said, well, what is your sin in this situation? And I was like, me? This is all him. He's the one. Like, he's the one that's not meeting my expectations. He's not asking me for me. He's not asking me about my quiet times. He's not asking me to pray. He's not leading. That was the words that I kept saying to him all the time, is he's not leading. And in actuality, I realized my sin, it was idolatry. Instead of finding happiness in God, and another sister had to point this out to me, but she said, you're idolizing your husband. You want him to make you happy, and he can't. Only God can do that. And it reminded me of a scripture that I'll pull up here in a second, but essentially I realized, like, he can't fix all my insecurities. Only God can. He's not gonna be the one. I want him to be the one singing in the car with me and going shopping with me, like all the things that my sisters would do when I was single. I wanted him to be that. And he's like, that's not me. And it sounds silly, but I was so deeply hurt by those little things, because the lie of, if he loved me, he would, kept playing in my mind, as opposed to, wait, like, I need to go to God. What does he need? My idolatry was making me think he needs to serve me, make me happy, versus what does he need also? So that's what I'll say. Did you want to add?
I've learned through marriage that she's always right. So there's nothing to correct there, but I think I will add that when we got married at 21. For a little bit of background for people, we were college sweethearts. She actually invited me out to church and helped me to get to know God, and for that I'm forever grateful. And then she, after knowing what a horrible person I was, decided to marry me. I think, our love story has always been encouraging, but when we got married, especially being young, there's a lot of things I was trying to figure out. What did it even mean to lead? What did it mean to be a husband? And I think her patience, and sometimes lack of patience with me as I figured that out, definitely caused challenges. But something I think you'll hear as we all share today is that what really kind of turned the tide for us in our marriage was discipling, was finding out that we could not be the answer for each other. Like, I love my wife, I love to make her happy, but like, I'm like the cherry on top for her, right? Like, God, and I mean this sincerely, like, God is the best thing that could have ever happened to either one of us. And when we start to think that we are the focus, or we're the biggest part, then we lose sight of what our role is. And my role as a husband is to present her radiant. She's already beautiful. She's already shining. I just get to add to that. And I think it's the same vice versa. So when we were able to get people in our lives consistently to help us and to talk to and to vent to and to have fun with, then it really changed things for us in our marriage. And we'll share more as we go on, but I'm going to pass the mic. Or I won't actually pass it, but.
Okay, gosh, yeah, that. I don't, how do we follow that? All right, so it's funny. We talked a little bit in the car on the way and last night about the 3 questions that we were given, and we came up with what I will call the crisis in our marriage. But like you guys said, there are many little ones that, and just what you said about the beginning, that first 2 years. So for us, it was a mini crisis. It'll sound mini now, but it was huge. It was in the first 2 weeks of our marriage. And we were not going to church at the time. So I can't give you the way that we overcame this, but it's when Robert decided to get sober. And we had a great time at our wedding. I mean, it wasn't like we were drunk at our wedding, but we definitely, were enjoying things. And to just switch that lifestyle, which goes with personality, it goes with so much that I just wasn't ready for. 2 weeks in New York City. So, and I'd never, oh gosh, that goes into so much else, but I won't even get into what happened the other. Okay, forget it. Anyway, so bottom line is that was almost like, what's the word I'm looking for? Navigational, change that started us. So it really took quite a while and a lot of help. Honestly, not so much from church because we didn't have church at the time, but AA was huge instrumental in just helping me get through it, help him get through it. And 35 years later, it's pretty cool that he's still hanging strong and doing it. So, and we've got this down now. So, but more recently, so I guess 4 to 5 years ago, Robert had a health scare, and it was in the middle of moving here, closing down a life we had lived in Houston for 27 years. That alone, I think there was a lot going on for me. About to be an empty nester, and we are a super close-knit family, super close to our kids. And so we were gonna be empty nesting, and we're moving to a new city, which we were thrilled to be moving here, and that's the best decision. Is there a best decision you've ever made? Question, that was it. Okay, so moving here, but just him going through this health crisis. And I'll tell you, for me, it was a lot of tears, a lot of prayer, and maybe 1 or 2 nervous breakdowns on my part. It was tough just getting it. We thought it was something that would last, maybe a few weeks or a month, and it took a good 1.5 years, maybe longer, 1.5 to 2 years. So that's just kind of setting up what was going on. I'll let him kind of tell you more about kind of how we got through it and more background on that.
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. We were living in New York. I moved my new bride from Dallas to Manhattan, and I was a big partier. I drank a lot, partied a lot, was not a good boy. And I moved ahead of her and was working on Wall Street, started drinking with my friends Thursday, Friday, Saturday, turned into Sunday. So I get married, I bring my bride to Manhattan, and the apartment that we moved into didn't have a bathroom, the kitchen wasn't finished. I mean, it was a disaster. But I continued my lifestyle, and I came home, I would go out drinking with my Wall Street buddies, and I thought that was fine, right? I mean, why not? And I came home, she goes, I'm moving back to Dallas. And I'm like, what? I go, all my friends bet we wouldn't make it a year at the wedding. That was the relationships I had. My friends didn't think we'd stay married a year, and they were right had it not been an intervention from the Lord. And so long story short on that one, I miraculously met my cousin who was in sobriety and started getting sober, and then someone shared their faith. Roberto Batetta shared his faith with me playing basketball on a rainy day on a weekend. And we're only 2 of us out there. Normally there's 50 guys waiting to play, and he goes, hey, you want to come to a Bible talk? And so I ended up sending Kristen to the Bible talks. I didn't want to go. I was stayed at work. I said, I got to work late. Will you go check it out? And that was Lynn and Barry Beatty and Steve and Lisa Johnson. Literally had a Bible talk across the street from us. And that started the journey. And, you know, the part of this story is having very close friends. Sorry. Well, you started it all. But we met the Prathers in 1990, and we've been together, great friends, and they know my life. And I had no idea I was going to get emotional. So that was a really dark period. We made it through it. The church saved our marriage, literally, and we've never left. And we've been in tough situations, tough churches, tough cultures, but we never left. And I tell people I'd rather struggle in here than struggle out there. I've struggled out there, and it's really dark. I've struggled in here and stayed faithful and made it through a lot of dark times. And the health one was, I don't want to get too long into it, but my bride was incredibly patient, and and Jim and Terry know everything about me, and they know everything about our marriage, and they know everything about my health issues, and I had a really, really bad, dark period, heart surgery, steroid shot went bad work environment. I was melting down, and literally it lasted what I thought was going to be 2 weeks. And I remember telling everybody, hey, I'm getting better, and they're like, no, you're not. And it was literally the darkest period of my life, and it lasted 18 months at least. And my sister was instrumental in helping me through that. And I mean, and the faithfulness and the continuing to show up, and my wife's incredible patience and prayers, and it was, I'm taking too much time, but I honestly didn't think I was going to make it through it. I thought, this is it. I'm done. And that's a really scary place. It wasn't just I'm depressed and I got to work through some things. It was a really bad period. And then I look up today, and I was reading Colossians 3 this morning, and Ephesians 3, both those, but what I was talking about, God doing immeasurably more for you, that's me, that's us. I mean, I'm so thankful and grateful, and he's surprised to the upside so many times. And so I think I rambled, didn't I? It was good. But thank you, thanks for listening to me, and I'll hand it off to our friends. Our friends of 34 years? Yeah, long time.
So my wife Terry and I, we've actually been married 38 years, and which is older than a lot of you guys. Just crazy to think about. So I'll set the stage for one of our crises. We became Christians about 5 years after we were married, and probably would not have made it more than a year more after that if we hadn't been run into by people that were concerned about our salvation, even when we weren't. And so I'm eternally grateful for those folks. It's led to friendships that have lasted decades, which is just crazy in this world. Even if we had to go to Manhattan to meet some of them. So, but one of the crises for me is if you get to know Terry and I'm the optimist and she's the realist. And so me talking about things that went wrong, crises, come on, what crises? Life's great. What's wrong with you guys? And I know there's a verse, that I always tell people about God using our weaknesses to really help other people understand. I'm really good at telling other people about that, but I'm not always good about realizing it myself. And even our last 2 days, Terry's going, well, what crisis? I've got a bunch we can talk about. Like, what are you talking about? So I'll give one of them. I did about 18 years in the corporate America, was nicely successful through all of it. And then when I turned about 40, I went into this life of an entrepreneur. And so I'm batting 1,000 for 18 years. And then all of a sudden, I start companies and start helping them, and I'm failing. I mean, failures, like abject, terrible, gross failures. And because it's just not, it's the norm. And yet I've got this norm of 1,000%, and 100%, I'm not hitting it with these things. And particularly with my background, I'm like, why, what is wrong? So I had one in particular that Terry wanted me to talk about. So I was gonna start a company that was gonna change internet advertising. Like that? 2007, Facebook's coming out, when that's who we're competing with. And I proceeded to start a company called UData that ran into a few people here and even met Christian through it. And it was a great idea, but I just didn't do it right. And I'm, again, an optimist, so I'm putting my money into it, I'm raising capital, I'm doing all these things, and it's just gonna be a failure because of things either in my control or not in my control. And so it led to deceit towards Terry. It led to me painting things bright when they weren't. It led to me hurting my family in a lot of ways, and me being extremely, anxious about things because I was the CEO of the company. And so that's the crisis. I wanted to give you guys that. That's one of my many failures, by the way. That's not the only one. I do want to tell you that, even though I am an optimist. And I'll turn over to Terry to kind of help you hear more about what happened.
A sweet friend this week said, God's going to walk us through a lot of fire for a reason. And I think, I couldn't think of one crisis. It seems like we've been in a lot. And it may be the way I look at things. It may be that I see things like scary, But I was thinking, we had, yes, we weren't disciples when we got to New York City either. And Jim had been sent to New York for 6 months, and I had a brand new baby. We had just gotten there a few months before. And I thought, there's no way. I'm doing New York by myself with this new baby. And I went back to work, of all things, I go to try to, have people outside of my home. And I hired a babysitter that I didn't know, and she continued not to show up. And I was going to lose my job. And I trudged off to Central Park, furious, ready to jump out of everything. I was just at my wit's end with my marriage, with not having help, not knowing anybody in the city. And I met a couple that day who had a baby in the park, and they invited me to church, and I became part of their Bible talk in New York City, and they were in the Amos ministry. And I was in that for quite some time with them. Jim comes home from New York, and he's like, what are you doing? But before that, if I hadn't met them that day, I had decided I was going to leave a note for Jim and go back to Texas and catch up when he got back. And that was sort of where we left it. So fast forward, we meet these great people, study the Bible with them, and become disciples. And same story as the Gauntts here is that we were so grateful for their intervention in our life at that time and helped us with parenting like nobody's business. That was a big need of ours. So if you go on further, we feel like things are great. Everything's, lined up the way it should as disciples. And we've got all this help and people discipling us, and we work through trust issues and all that. So after that, New York 7 years, New Jersey a year, San Francisco 7 years. We come back to Houston, and at that point, Jim was working actually with Robert, and it was great because we were happy to get back to Texas. 9/11 happens, he loses his job because financial stuff, and it was super disappointing. My boys were reeling because they had just moved from California. And then we kind of went into a mode of survival, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it, except that I went back to my old sin. I'm just going to go back to work. I'm going to be self-sufficient. I'm going to work hard. And in my mind, I was carrying a load. And so Jim got through another startup, which took forever. I don't know, it felt like forever. And seems like it was, 7 years or so. And there were times he wasn't bringing an income. And I was terrified. So I dug in more, and I saw it as, I've got to carry this. I've got to do it. You know, in the meantime, we're involved with church and we're doing all of our kids' sports and going to school and doing what we thought we were supposed to do to look great. But honestly, it was survival. And the Gauntts were there for us through a lot of it. I'm sure they listened to more stories than they wanted to hear. But it was just one of those times where I didn't see how we were going to get out of it until he'd, sell a company or whatever. But UData came along after he finally sold that one company. And I was so glad to be out of it that I asked him not to get into UData with advertising, because I said, I just don't think I can do it again. I don't want to get people involved with their finances and ask for investment money and do things that I didn't think that we could, bear up under, because you get scared you're going to lose somebody's money. And so Jim went ahead and took the job because he wanted to help a friend and he said, I've done it before, I can help them, but he got involved fully and then took, CFO? CEO position. And more years go by and it just didn't work out. And we were getting further and further apart. And I know, I hate not proud of this, but I know I got to one point where I was like, I just can't do this anymore. We either need to separate or divorce. I said it to him in our backyard, and I feel so bad about it. But, we're best friends forever, and to get to that point, it gets pretty bad. You don't want to do that. But I knew that, I trusted that God would get us through it, but I was at that point, I couldn't go back. And he looked at me and he was like, wow, I didn't know you're feeling that strongly. I go, I just can't. I can't bear up. I'm working so many hours. I'm doing so much. But what I realized that day, and I think Jim realized that day, was my sin was taking on and being very self-efficient. I thought, I could do it all. I can handle this. I'm going to dig in. But I wasn't trusting God. God wasn't holding me up because I wasn't letting him. And I think Jim, it was great. He turned it around in such a great way. He decided that day, he goes, I'm going to just drop this company. And it crushed our heart. Because, you put that much time and effort into something and you lose people's money. It kills you. This is the last thing you want to happen, is have your family and your friends who invested to lose their money too. But he made that decision. I was so proud of him because I thought it was the best thing for our family. And meanwhile, we got kids going to college. We had a lot of expenses. A lot of things were hitting us at that time. So he turns it around. We start hitting the pavement and prayer walking every morning and realizing that we had just not gotten to a good point. And we prayed and prayed and prayed, and it took a very long time. But God blessed Jim with a great job, and he went into that. And I tried to take less work and be more there for the kids. And I think it was a neat time just to see God work. And God did. He blessed his efforts, and he brought it around. He helped us. I had a landmark day of surrender. I surrender everything to you, God. It was such a great feeling. It was like, you take it. I don't know why I'm trying to do this. This is crazy. I'm messing up everything. And it was such a cool feeling to see God just take control. And I think we all do that at times. We forget he's there for us, just waiting to be asked. And so I made a promise I would not go a day without just saying, I need you to take control today. Because I'm going to take control. That's what I do. And I love how Jim truly just was so humble through that and had to talk to all those people. And he just was such a cool guy to be close to. We worked through so much. We had always talked about our businesses and things like that. But during that time, I knew he wasn't talking to me about it. And I felt that deceit. And I hated feeling cut out of his life. And I even said something like, I feel like we have a mistress. It's your job, And I hate that kind of stuff. But, you got to be that real with each other and that open to get through the hardest things. Because I think the hard things are really what make you a stronger couple. If you can embrace it in some way, you can go, okay, we're going to get through anything after this, because we got real. And I think Jim and I both trusted God more than we ever have in our life. Thank God for our friends who just sat next to us and talked us through and off the wall. And I'm just very thankful to God who just took care of us. Enough.
All right. Next, the second question is, what makes your marriage joyful? And it could be anything.
Hello, testing. Am I on? Hello. Oh, there you go. I'm on. So I think there's a couple things, and I'll try to be brief here. One, in terms of what makes your marriage joyful and our marriage joyful, I think it has to start with gratitude. When I think about just the challenges that we've had in our marriage, the fun times and the not fun times, generally we don't get to those fun times until we are able to get to a place of just being grateful. When we're not looking at, comparing our marriage, right? So for example, we've been married 11 years. In a lot of our circles, we're the old married guys. Now we get to sit up here and be the young married guys. And I think it's funny, but whatever, young married, old married, it's easy to start comparing where you are in your marriage. Her husband sings with her in a car, or her husband gets these are a discipling couple, so I make a lot of references to them. But Mr. Tim here has flowers for this lady here, like every day. And so, I miss a couple weeks, so I'm like, oh my gosh. But I think when we're able to just really focus on what God has done in our life, and just, like you mentioned, the immeasurably more than we can conceive of or ask for, that really helps us to be joyful. The other thing I was going to share is just gut level honesty. It's really hard to just be joyful, to be having fun, when you know that somebody's holding something back. And you can feel that. And I think, again, early on in our marriage, there was a lot of deceit. And it wasn't until we were able to just sit down and just be gut level honest with each other that we could just breathe and then start working forward and really enjoying and having fun in our marriage. The last thing that I will share, you guys see us, we have kids, they're right there every Sunday. And as parents, I think one of the things that really helps keep our marriage joyful is for us and our kids knowing that they are not the center of our marriage. And I have more fun probably just being goofy with my wife in front of our kids, or just doing things to make sure that they know that my wife comes first. And then just to be able to see them imitate that and understand that. And I know that's bleeding into the third question. But I think especially as parents of young children, it's easy to be consumed with their activities. And we're not even at the place where we're driving them to all these different sports, and I'm scared. But even now, I mean, we have movie night every Friday night, and our kids know that that's really fun. But we have a cutoff for movie night because they have to go to sleep so we can have our time. And sometimes that really bugs our kids, but it's important for them to know that this is still priority for us. And as soon as we stop making it priority, then it's not fun. It's almost like we're working for everyone else. We're working for kids, we're working for everyone else, and we're not just enjoying what God has so mercifully blessed us with. So that's what I'll share. I think she has more specifics.
I think, and I'll just echo a lot of these things, but for sure, one of the things that has brought us joy, I think, is that openness and vulnerability with each other, but also with other people in our lives. And for us, that is a discipling couple. Like, even this week, it's hard to be fully present, like Marcus said, when you're holding on to stuff and you have like this argument or these thoughts in your head and they're going and you don't even realize, and you have someone here, but you're having a whole conversation in your head, and and it's hard to be joyful when you're not present. And I think being able to have a safe space for us to talk with each other and have our feelings heard, but also with another person or another couple. It reminds me of the scripture in James where it says, it's confess your sins to each other so that you can be healed. And the prayer of a righteous man is powerful and effective. And for us, that being able to have total peace and surrender in that, even even this week, I had something come up this week where I was feeling like emotional. I didn't know why. And I didn't know in our conversation, but then I met with some sisters in our small group, and it just like, everything just kind of came out, and it ended up coming up in our discipling time. And at first it just felt heavy, but after that, literally after just talking about it and having a time to pray, I felt so much peace in our relationship. And that makes it easier to go and like, yes, we're gonna go see this movie, or yes, we're gonna go and do these fun things. But it's because it's not the thing, it's because there is a connection and a peace in our dynamic that brings that joy. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
Okay, joy in marriage. You know, this is, I don't know why for me, this question of the three is the hardest to plan for or to think about, because we've been married 34 and a half years, and we've, you know, yeah, we touched on a couple of crisis points, but for the most part, we just get along. There's joy in our marriage. Of course it's God, you know, and, you know, I'm not paid to stand here and tell you all that today. It is 100% that that's what it is. Yeah, but I think it stems from, of course, having God as our foundation, being able to talk about everything that you just said. Just, yes, having those conversations in my mind. I'm upset with him before he hits the door because of this or that or the other, but having that common ground is of God, but it's of having shared passions. We love the same kind of movies. We both hate horror movies. We both love The Crown right now. I even gotten him into The Crown.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so good. We love the same music. We like the same food. We just have so many common, and some of it we've given in each other's lane to like more of. But it's been such an easy stride with you. It's been so natural. I don't have an eloquent answer for this. I just don't. It's just something that's worked for
That was
us.
pretty eloquent, I think.
What is?
I think that was pretty eloquent.
Well, it's just, like I said, I don't have a scripture to back it up. It's just, I think, find some common things that do bring you joy. I mean, it could be just going and sitting at the lake and letting your feet dangle a while. Go down to the green belt. Go hike together. These are all things that we enjoy doing. I don't play golf. He loves golf, but I like to ride in the golf cart with him. Watch him, cheer him on, find his lost golf balls. Just things, you know, that it just keeps us together. We try to do everything together. We really do. So again, I think I kind of butchered that. That's just what I'm thinking off the top of my head. So you fill in.
So she doesn't like my rap music yet, so, yeah, it's a weird thing. It's a sense of humor, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, this is, I've been noodling on this one a lot because she shared a lot of what we talked about, but, you know, I think a couple of things. One, our family, our kids, our grandkids. We have grandkids. Watching her light up with grandkids is the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's a different look on her face. It's like, and she's an amazing boy mom. She was an amazing boy mom. She still is. But they're grown men. We're going to talk about that one next. They're grown men. But I think giving back. You know, I'm sitting here, and I think the Spirit just kind of started working on my heart here on giving back to people, and we don't talk about that a lot because we're not really supposed to, but we love encouraging, and we love together, and we love giving to the kingdom. We love giving to causes, and we get a lot of joy in our marriage of giving. And I hesitated talking about it because it sounds, you know, but we really enjoy that. And we love this community. We love coming here on Sunday mornings, and we love doing it together, and just being part of the fellowship. And I can't imagine, our life without community and fellowship and purpose and meaning, all that good stuff. So, you have a mic, Dylan.
Do you want to go first? Join our marriage. So a couple things. One is unity. That's the word. You guys are unified. I think that's awesome. I think that's what Robert and Kristen are talking about too, is unity comes kind of different flavors as we get older, as we have different circumstances, but how well can you unify with your spouse during those both good and bad times? I would say something very specific for Terry and I that got us through was prayer, praying together. And you can be honest when you're talking to God, even though your wife's sitting in the room, and vice versa. It's like, God, I hate my wife. Yeah, well, but then you're going to have to work through it, with God. It's like, all right. The other side is kind of a realization of what I can control in life. Because I cannot control her, and she can't control me. And I have a small chance of being able to control myself, right? And so beyond that, it's kind of, all right, God, I need some help. And really understanding where I stand in the pecking order, is really important for us to remain joyful. Because if I get everything from her and I put all my dysfunction on her, well, I tried it once, it didn't work. And then I'd say the other one is just humor. Put humor. If we laugh at stuff, and we're, when it gets really silly, we'll be laughing our heads off just because we're like, oh my goodness, why? Well, how do we get ourselves into this one? Or, and I think that helps lighten up the spirit. Lightens up I think God created laughter, and we don't use it enough. So.
It's funny, I thought this was an easy one. I don't know why, but I think because Jim is truly my best friend in the world, and I think he mind melds with me now. It's almost like you have that same thought, you don't even finish sentences. And we laugh about everything. Even if we're angry, we get to a point in the anger where we'll stop and go, that was stupid. It's just gotten to that point where it's easier. And I was even thinking, looking back over things, nothing looks that hard anymore. You can kind of look back at some of the stuff that you did and you go, it's not that bad. It's all worth it. And I think especially now with grown children and like grandkids who just give your heart a new start. They just do. And I think that makes it even easier to go, I just feel for them. They're in that hard stage, the young, no sleep stage, and you're going, oh gosh. You just have such compassion for everybody. And I think our fun things are traveling in the car together and talking and listening to music. We just crank it up and sing, and nobody cares what we sound like. The kids used to have to listen to us, poor things, but they used to sing right along with us. It was a blast. I loved car time. I love dancing with Jim. I don't know, it's a real connection time. I love, we go to movies as much as we can, despite COVID, and we go on long walks. Those walks are just heaven for us. And I think those kinds of times where you just do it together, anything you can do together. I'm like Kristen, I'm the driver of the golf cart, but I just want to be out there in the beauty and be with Jim. I mean, that's all it is. And you just want to enjoy life together and see things.
Yes. So
names,
we
that kind
have
of thing.
2 boys, and they are little. They're 7 and 4. So we are still in the early, yes. We got a ways to go. And so we definitely are still learning every day. I guess we always will. But like for us, I think in these early years as baby, newborn, and now elementary age, I think the most valuable parenting decision we have made would be maybe just deciding that the kingdom and the church and our devotion to fellowship is not just a us thing, it's a family thing. And I think ever since Micah was born, we just kind of made a decision that even though it was hard, there was a lot of times when Micah was born where I was like, man, is this even worth it? Like, I'm gonna do all this stuff to get ready. And I was nursing. I'm like, now I gotta think about all these people and I just gotta figure out all these things. And it feels like a lot. And so is it worth it for me to go and then the baby cry and then I'm in the lobby and I'm missing the whole sermon? Is this worth going? But for us, we talked about it and it's yes, because I needed to see people. Even if I missed the whole lesson and I was in the lobby the whole entire time, it was worth it for me because I needed to have one conversation in the hallway, and that was worth it. And I needed to practice getting my kid out the door and practice all these little things for me to build confidence as a mom. And so that was important for us, but I think that also continued where we didn't want it, as much as it's able, right, in this season of life, like, as much as we're able, it's, yeah, like, we want them to know this is our family thing. So much more. I don't know if you want to share that story.
So I think what she said is true, right? I mean, those things that we're doing when they're little, they're practices, not just for them, but for us. And it's that whole part of training your child up in a way that they should go. Our children get to see the real authentic us. They see us if we're happy, they see us if we're sad. Ideally, we have a really nice Christian household where we do devotionals and they know all about God and they love God and we love God and it's awesome. But sometimes it's not that, but those practices, they build character in our children. And one example is there was a couple of Sundays ago, it was actually probably 2 months ago, it was Father's Day. And Father's Day, we were coming to church, and for many of you guys, you know, I've had an injury, and I was just I didn't want to come to church that day. I had a lot of feelings just about being here, and there's a lot. There's a whole nother story. But we're driving to church. I'm trying to push through, but we get into the parking lot, and I'm like, I can't do this. So we turn around, right? We turn around, we start driving out, and what do we hear? It's not my wife saying, no, we can't go. It's our kids going, wait, Dad, why are you turning around? Where are you going? Dad's not feeling good. We're going to just do church online today. We can't do church online. Like, I want to go to church. I want to see my friends. Aren't you supposed to go and hear a lesson too? Yes, but today, like, Daddy, what's wrong? Dad's just not feeling good. Just because you're not feeling good doesn't mean you don't go to church. You're like, what? It's like, we've trained them too well. But we've had plenty, I think for us, there's been so many times when we have seen God work on our hearts through our children. And that's a direct result of us making a commitment as a family that we are going to just model being Christians. And being Christians is not model being perfect, but model being Christians, even pushing through when times are hard or when you have those times where you don't want to be together. And then one last thing that I would share, because it kind of piggybacks on what you mentioned, Robert, but that giving back, I think as a family, and I don't know, people might agree or not agree, but like for us, our kids' best friends are the children of our best friends. It's not vice versa. It's not that they met these people and they have great friends and now we got to go and figure out how to hang out with this person that we don't know we don't. That's not the way we work. Our children's friends are the children of our best friends, and that's been hard. When we moved here, the kids that were here, it was Carla and Adam, which meant that my kids' best friends became girls, and I'm a boy dad, and they go and play dress up, and my son comes downstairs in a tiara, and he's like, Dad, I want one. Can you give me one? Why can't I do ballet? I want to dress in pink. And I'm sitting here praying, I'm like, babe, maybe we should go to the North Church where there's boys, because they have boys. I want my kid to be around boys. And we're like, well, we can make friends with his friends at school and in our neighborhood. But like our conviction is that our kids' best friends are gonna be the children of our best friends. So what does that mean? I gotta suck it up. And those are our best friends. And you know what God did? Now we have a lot of boys. Yeah. We have a lot of boys. And I'm sorry for the Pharisees because it's flipped. It's like 20 boys and like their daughters. But just keep praying. But I love how that, like having that as a conviction, we aren't concerned about the friendships that our kids are going to have. And then they get to see us, they get to see family. When I was in a hospital, the people that they saw that came to help us were our friends, our church family. And they got to see that. And to them, that's normal. And I don't think there's a better gift that we could give to our children than for them thinking that this is normal. And what's going on in the world, that's not normal. And when that becomes their expectation, then they don't let you miss church. So that's my thought.
So I'm going to focus, Robert, on the best parenting decision we've made, and I'm hats off to him for this. This was not me. Robert decided when our boys were, yes, I agree with the whole start them out young, have the quiet times, have the little devos, what we called them. Yes, you don't get them every day, and you want that, but we definitely always prayed before every meal. The kids knew that God was center. Right. You know, again, not that it was every day. We tried, but raising 3 boys, it gets rowdy. And but you know, I tell you what kept them grounded and very close. We are a super close-knit family. You know, still, that's why I will rear my head when you say you were a good mama.
You are.
But is Robert, when the boys started in junior high, I think, it's probably 7th or 8th grade anyway, once a week he would take one of them out for breakfast before school. And when they were that young, it was so cool. Like, I get to go to breakfast with Dad. You know, I get to go have pancakes and eggs before school. That was like a luxury, a cool thing. And so he would take them. And it's funny, the very truth, the initial reason for it was to figure out how to talk to them about the birds and the bees. We wanted to get them before school got them, telling them about, you know, the sex ed and all that stuff. So I'll let Robert tell a couple of funny stories on that. We'll keep them short. But so where it started as something more we felt was a need, it became, as the kids grew, and he kept this up not only all the way through high school, all 3 of my boys. I have a 29-year-old who has 2 kids now, 27-year-old Tyler, y'all know Tyler, and then our youngest is 23, Turner, and he still to this day takes them to breakfast once every few weeks. I mean, one of the boys is going to breakfast almost every week with him, every other anyway. All that to say, it became safe time. It became time that the boys could sit with him and they could share something that was going on at school. And it was one of those, no repercussions. If you want to tell me, you know, you smoked a cigarette or you know, grabbed on a girl, whatever, just whatever. It was safe time. You could
do those things. Okay.
It's safe time to tell him, because we really, 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 that was the thing that we as a couple set down in the beginning with our kids from the youngest age. You can do bad things. We don't want you doing bad things. Never, never lie. Lying is the worst of all sins, period. So I think that, coupled with the fact that he was so good in that, it's that father-son, more so than I could have ever done as the mom. You know, I'm the one that's got to keep him moving in school and more practical. And he was more connected to them in that way. Huge, huge difference in just their relationship. Yeah, I think that's it. I think it's something else, but it went out of my mind. But go ahead.
So one of the times, so they actually started a little younger, but one of the best was there's a restaurant called La Peep in Houston, and I had Travis there, and I'm doing the birds and the bees talk, and they have little crayons and things you can draw on, and I'm having this really long talk, and I go, you have any questions? He goes, yeah, how do you spell banana? I'm like, what? He goes, how do you spell banana? And he the word search on the little, yeah. It was one of those great. But what I found, and one of my mentors in life did that with his sons. And so I said, that's a great idea. The kids will open up when you're giving them food. And they love pancakes and syrup and butter. So it was a frenzy, sugar, let's go, anything you want. And then they start getting older and having more issues, and they started a little bit dreading it because they knew the questions about purity. And they're like, can we just talk about purity on the front end? Because I know you're gonna do it. And I'm like, so anyway, there's a great scripture about fathers do not exasperate. And we've been around the kingdom a long time, and we had some great role models with the Prathers because their boys were a few years ahead of ours. And we watched how they raised their kids. And we also saw other families just overbearing. They had to be perfect. You know, the heart was a mess. The outward appearance was really good. And we were like, okay, we can't correct every mistake. We can't correct every sin. We can't be on them vigilantly all the time. And we would pray that they would get caught in the minor things, literally. And so they'd come to us and we could help them learn about grace, right? If they don't learn about grace, you're going to try to be this perfect kid that's afraid to, because they're sinning. We all sin, right? So we really prayed a lot about that. And our kids use Safe Time. We had our oldest son, I'll never forget it, goes, hey, can I use Safe Time? And we're like, sure. And we're like, oh no. And he was in high school. We're like, yes, no consequences. But we had that trust and that openness, and we worked really hard not to exasperate our kids. We wanted God to work on their lives because we forget that God's involved in their lives, and God has a plan and a vision for each one of them. And as they aged, we couldn't parent them like they were 4 when they're 8. And when they're 15, you can't parent them like they're 8. So there's this releasing and trusting and praying and letting God mold the character. And so, yeah.
I just want to add one more thing. I'm sorry, I know you weren't done. No, I'm done. What I remember is that for those that do have kids and or multiple kids, I think the key was that you took them each individual. I mean, we make a big deal about doing things as a family, and even to this day, we get together as a family and we're talking all over each other. We can't get it all in because we're all talking, but it's that one-on-one time. It's just, treat it like you and God's time. It's great to go out and go on a prayer walk with 2 or 3 girls and have that, but you want that time with just you and God. This is the way I think it really built, and that's where that Safe Time came in, because they're not going to share certain things in front of their brother. So it was, I don't know why I want to say that.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so our sons, we have 3 sons as well, 34, 31, and 26, 7. Oh my gosh. We're real old. But I love those boys. Here, you go for
We consider them our best friends right now. I mean, truly, they're right up there. We don't have one best friend, we have a lot of best friends, but they are now become our best friends, and that's pretty cool to say. Especially when you've seen them go through so many things and the struggles, and I think the valuable thing, I wanted Jim to talk about it, but what we didn't get to share was Jim did another startup company after the other one. And anyway, but it was such an interesting thing because he was not going to do it without the entire family's approval. And it was kind of a cool thing because each of our kids, we all sat down and he goes, look, I'm considering this, but I'm not going to do it if y'all aren't feeling 100%. And yeah.
So I made the CEO come to our hotel where we were staying and have breakfast with us. And Embassy Suites has great pancakes. And then I made him present to my family. He went away, and I said, okay, guys, what do you think? And so,
Well, so the point was that we were all included in that decision. And I think it was so valuable for them. And we had been trying to do that all along, but I don't think they had ever been brought into major life decisions in our family. And they felt special, and they all wanted to see it do well. And each of them have a part of it and have been working with Jim in it, and they have their own jobs, but they also support it, which is a really cool thing. And I've been able to too, and I'm really proud of Jim and how he did that and brought it around. And I think God will bless that. But I think the cool thing is praying with our kids when they were little. We loved devotional time. We made it a blast. I mean, they would get up and jump around, and I always say this story, but we had Joey was the bad kid. And I'm sorry if there's anybody named Joey here, but we used Joey as the guy who did what they did that day and talked about it in the group. And can you believe Joey did that? What would you do if Joey did that again? You know, and have them give those examples. And we would pray and we would sing, and it just became such a fun time that they were like, when are we going to sit down? You know, they would make it a blast, and we all enjoyed it a lot. We couldn't do it every night. You can't. I mean, but you do it as much as you can. And I think when they were older, one of the most valuable things we did was, you know, it's hard to send them out into the world, but we sent them off onto Hope Volunteer Youth Corps. And wow, you know, opened their eyes. They got very attached to the kids they were working with. They saw Jesus, you know, working on a daily basis. And we went together to Cambodia. And that was a life-changing trip for us and really helped our family just want to give back to the world. It was a cool experience, and I saw it as a goal of our family because we love to travel, that our kids love to travel, but also to see other cultures and how they live and bring them into our life. We had many, many people live with us over the years. I can't even count how many. And so they got to see different types of people, different experiences, but they were all from church, and they considered them part of their family too. So they see church as a family unit. And I mean, it's not what everybody can do, but we just happened to have room at the time. And I think it was a cool experience because now they have friends throughout church who they consider like a brother or sister. Anyway, the prayer time was huge. I think for us now, they know when we're going to get in the car, we're going to pray. And I think that just seeing Jim and I hang tough and persevere over the years may be the most valuable because they know it hasn't been easy. We've been through a lot of church changes and things that weren't easy or fun. And I think those are the things that you live out, and you are the example for them, and that they get to see you be that example.
yeah, okay, I can talk now. So I'll just put one thing. The most valuable thing I think we did was establish what the family pecking order was. And we often had to do that. So it's like, you know, here's God, right? And here's mom and dad. And I would literally have to say it sometimes. I love mom more than I love any one of you. Yeah. What? So that's right. She comes before you guys. Now you guys are right there. Da, da, da. Of course, they always, yeah, exactly. But understanding God, you know, our relationship and then the kids was really good for them. So they knew kind of the priority in our lives. And I think that, you know, had to remind them sometimes on respecting mom and what that meant and respecting God and how that worked with our family dynamic. But I thought that was super valuable.
And one last thing. We, like the Gauntts, it was super important for us to let them talk about anything. Yeah. And it was open door at our house. And yeah, they hid stuff, but it always came out. God always had a way to bring it out. It was awesome. And so I think it's kind of neat. You just wait and you pray a lot.
Can I add one thing?
The night is long, the fire
No.
is burning.
This is 30 seconds.
All
But
good.
so hopefully you learned that it's marriages and raising kids. It's not a straight line. It's not A to Z. And if your expectation is, I would encourage you today to change that, but stay all the way through to Z. Okay, whatever course it takes, stay all the way. Don't quit. And don't quit being parenting, don't quit your community, stay the course. Because we've had long duration now, and there's so many blessings of long duration faithfulness in a marriage and in a community, so.
Yeah. Well, can we express with some noise how amazing this was? This was amazing. Thank you, guys. I love you. I knew this was going to be amazing. And, you know, just for you to just remember this moment, this is what Tribe is about, right? It's different people loving God the best they can and helping each other. That's it. It's uncomplicated, and it's this powerful. That is the power. So what we'll do now is we'll just take communion, we'll say a prayer, sing one more song, and we have the South African Affair food truck waiting for us. Delicious food, and we can hang out there. Let's pray.